So I've overcome many of the challenges in my life that I never thought to be possible, like generalized anxiety, overcoming social anxiety, seeking, non-dual seeking, spiritual seeking, a lot of doubts. And I've helped a lot of clients, a growing body of clients, do the same thing. And really what it comes down to, one of the most core and important skills is embodiment. So this video is a distillation of all of the most important things that I've personally learned about embodiment to help you do the transformative work that really changes the heart at a deep level. So stick around to the end of the video. I'll also include an advanced tip for those serious people at the end who are really serious about this and taking that into daily life, so you can start to transform your heart at the deepest level possible. If these are things you're interested in, transforming the heart, liberation at the deepest level, then you're in the right place. And I would encourage you to notice, in the spirit of embodiment, that as you're watching this video, do you notice that there's a sense of boredom or a sense of frustration of needing to click off the video? Just know that these are very real coping strategies that we can use that I'm going to go into deeper. So just be mindful of when you feel restlessness in your body and that sense that I want to distract myself by watching another video, whether or not you actually need to act upon that. And just slow down and feel those sensations in the spirit of learning about embodiment. You clicked on this video for a reason, so that could be a really good teacher for you. So my name's Sam. If you're new here, I'm supporting non-dual seekers, serious non-dual seekers in recurrent emotional distress, regulate their nervous systems from the ground up. So in this video, we're going to cover a large range of things that what I think to be the most important things for really letting embodiment into our lives and transforming our heart. We're going to start by talking about what embodiment actually means. We're then going to move into why should we even be in the body in the first place? Like, what's in it for you if you start to feel bodily sensations in an ongoing way? And I want to talk about the 3 levels of embodiment and go into the nuances from more beginner to advanced. So this video is going to include really juicy stuff for both beginners of this like healing, psycho-spiritual awakening work, as well as for the advanced practitioners to refine and tune in and dial in your skill of embodiment. And then I really want to emphasize like real life applications and pitfalls, so you can learn all the tricky and delicate nuanced things that you don't really hear in your general average video. So I want to go into a lot more depth into things like social situations, distractions, like facing these really intense and convincing sensations. What do we do with things like non-dual doubts, helplessness, victimhood, these sorts of sensations that often fly under the radar. And then we're going to finish up with a 10-minute meditation to really put this into practice so that we're doing it in daily life and taking it out into daily life. We're not just mentally masturbating over concepts, we're actually letting this in at the level of the heart where the transformation takes place. So let's start with what is embodiment, right? We need to be on the same page. If we're not on the same page with what we're even talking about here, then it doesn't really make sense to keep going. We'll feel a bit fragmented. Essentially, when I say embodiment, what I mean in this situation is, what are you feeling? So what are you feeling right now? You can check in your body. Doing a quick little body scan through your body, maybe a bit of restlessness, maybe a little bit of curiosity, maybe a little bit of excitement. Just notice. Maybe you actually don't feel anything at all and you feel quite numb. You feel like a tension or just tightness. So you might even be saying, I don't know what I'm feeling. So this is all welcome. All of this is going to be covered in this video. So don't worry if you're in that last camp. But yeah, essentially, what am I feeling? Which leads me into, why should we even be in the body? Why should we be in the body in the first place? And it's a really good question to ask. You may have heard the phrase, the body keeps the score, right? And that's very true. The body essentially stores all of the source code hardware, all of the source code programs. Like, whenever we go into a certain situation with certain conditions, it's almost like a client of mine that I really like. He had this analogy that he used where it's like putting in a CD into a computer and then the body boots up a program, i.e. the nervous system boots up a program, and then we execute certain functions that our nervous system has learned to stay safe and get love. So essentially, if we can feel into the body, by not distracting ourselves, by not doing the cultural standard, we can feel into the subtle sensations in the body at an increasingly deeper and deeper level. This is how we reverse all of the unconscious mechanisms that are essentially playing and running our lives, and is essentially the foundational thing that allows us to do meaningful transformational work like shadow work or healing work at large, and really trusting our instinct and balancing out our whole body mind. And I want to tell you a little bit about my story. In high school, for me, I was really popular in a sense. I was like the popular, I was a school captain. I was like one of the college leaders in front of, doing speeches and all sorts of things. On the surface level, I looked really happy, like really popular. People might have even looked up to me. Now, I don't know what the perception of me was, but, I was elected as a school captain in front of, many people. And what's really interesting is if you checked my body at that time, if you checked how I was feeling, you asked me how I was feeling, I would have had no idea. I would have probably told you, oh, I don't know, like, I'm feeling okay. I'm feeling okay, right? But what was actually happening there was I was deeply disembodied, deeply disconnected from my body from whatever reason, through my karma, through my upbringing. And I had learned, in order to fit in, to use all sorts of coping strategies and identities that made me look like the popular person, that made me look like the charismatic person. But again, if you checked my body, and what I know now is if I would have slowed down and actually felt what was going on, which I had to go through later, you would have found all sorts of pins and needles, all sorts of like really uncomfortable, painful emotions, that I was using this overcompensation strategy and thoughts and identities to essentially avoid the more uncomfortable buried emotions like shame, anxiety, depression and sadness, these sorts of emotions. And as I went on further into my first job working as a cardiac technician, I started to notice that, like, holy shit, as I started meditating and becoming more conscious, I started to notice these patterns like really at large, and I'm like, how was I doing that? Oh my God, like there's so much discomfort in my body here. So I really had to unlearn a lot of these identities, which through the process of embodiment has now allowed me to drop away a lot of those conditionings. And obviously the work still continues. It continues for masters of this work for years and years and years. But until we develop the skill of embodiment, we're not going to be able to reverse and understand and have loving acceptance of who we are in a deep way to reverse this. And it also is, if we're talking about nervous system regulation, in this sense, in the way that we can reverse all of our subconscious patterns, this is a critical skill to have, because until we're in the body, that's really where the reversal happens. That's where the nervous system regulation can happen. And through that process, we get access to deeper, more authentic relationships, more connectedness to life and the world at large. And we start to, because we're coming into contact with our emotion body a lot more, we trust the world more. We trust ourselves more. We're acting in a much higher congruence with spirit, or our awake nature, with our true self, because we're recruiting a more holistic understanding of ourselves through our emotion body that we've been disconnected from. And of course, we can even unravel things like doubts about spiritual awakening and all these sorts of things that are constantly running in the background. Those sorts of insidious programs, those insidious programs that are just constantly there all the time in the background, that you wonder, like, why do I keep doing that? Embodiment's the thing that really gets us there, that can help reverse those very deeply unconscious and persistent programs. So let's now talk about the 3 levels or 3 stages of embodiment that I've seen play out within myself and other people that I've worked with and just seen in my spheres. And by understanding this, you're going to really get a sense of where you're currently at through my eyes, through my understanding, and where you can get toward. Because this, as I said, this continues to deepen. So it's worthwhile understanding, having a bit of a knowledge base and framework of what it can look like to deepen along this path of embodiment. The first level is beginner. The second level is intermediate, and the third level is advanced. And each stage has certain signature traits and things that we do and questions we might be asking that can color our practice, essentially. And spanning these 3 different periods, it's essentially, we can make an analogy to like riding a bike. In the beginner phase, we're learning to ride a bike, and we're getting prompts from other people, getting reminders, and we're really wobbly, and occasionally we fall off the bike. So we might succumb to things like distractions. We might bottom out and forget that we're trying to be with sensation. But then as we progress to things like the intermediate phase, we've sort of got the handle of riding the bike. We've built the habit more, but that comes with its own challenges. And then with the advanced stage, we're more congruent and we're riding the bike quite seamlessly, and then refining and deepening in subtle ways to improve our bike riding game to upwards, where we're doing like BMX jumps and this sort of thing. So there's a constant deepening that can happen there, but there's still signatures of what's advanced. So let's drill into the beginner stage. What can we do in the beginner stage if we're just sort of essentially becoming aware of bodily sensations? Well, I remember for me, what this looked like was I had just done my first Vipassana meditation retreat. So where essentially you do body scanning, like 10 days of scanning the body. So in that sense, I was already becoming embodied. But I remember specifically hearing teachings after the retreat about from a teacher called Joseph Goldstein, a really excellent teacher, a really famous, renowned teacher. And he introduced the concept to me of mindfulness, just basic mindfulness of walking, essentially. And I didn't quite understand the implications of this at first. So you might be asking questions in this initial phase, like, what's the point of this? Like, why am I even trying to become aware of bodily sensations? Or like I just want to get to the end of my suffering, man. Like, why am I focusing on bodily sensations? And I remember this for me. I remember in one of my first jobs, I would be like walking around between on lunch breaks, and I would be really mindful of sensation. But at this point, I was still like suffering a lot. So there was this sort of background thing of like, why the hell am I even doing this? Like, this just feels helpless. It feels like there's so much here, and I don't even know what the point of this is. But I know now the importance of it. It's really setting the foundation. So essentially what you can do in this stage, what a practice might look like, is to simply become more aware of your sensations on your feet as you walk. Or you might notice the sun on your skin or the sensations of your palms. And just tuning into these really basic things whenever you can remember to. So when you're washing the dishes, you're feeling the water on your skin. You're noticing the plates and the dishes, like the subtle movements of your hand around the plate to the best degree that you can. You might notice when you get into the shower, you feel the sensation of the water on your skin. And what you're doing here is you're building the foundation for very deep transformative work. So it's not like we're going straight to BMXing on the bike, like doing big jumps. It's critical, and unfortunately we really can't bootstrap this process. We can't just we can try to be more mindful of these like more intense sensations and have subtler and subtle attunement. But really at this stage, if we're just beginning in embodiment work, our gateway is through the basic senses, like feeling the feet on the ground. And what that does is it will continue to deepen more and more and more. So just be mindful in this phase when you're doing this sort of stuff, that this is setting the stage, setting the foundation for more deep and transformative work that's going to be critical for you. Like, I thank myself for doing that groundwork. I sort of took it on with a bit of blind faith at the start, like, okay, Joseph Goldstein's telling me to do this. Like, it seems to be this somewhat of a thing that's going to help me wake up more. So, all right, I'm just going to do it. And I'm glad that I did in the end, because, you know, I know now from what I mentioned at the start, it sets the stage for transformative work. So we can do that. And one of the things that we can do in this stage is don't be ashamed of yourself to set reminders to become more embodied. Frequent and small moments through the day will start to bridge the gap to the intermediate phase, right? So if we have small little gaps where we have an alarm go off, you could just use your phone alarm, or you can use an app. Like, I know the Waking Up app by Sam Harris has something called reminders that you can use. But these small little windows where through the day you notice sensation, and then those little noticings get bigger and bigger and bigger. So then we're starting to move into the intermediate phase where we're aware on increasing levels of bodily sensations in our body. Okay, intermediate phase. Now, the intermediate phase is really good because, like I said, we're in this space where we're noticing more frequently sensations in our body. So we're more adept at noticing the sensations in our hands, in our feet, and we're doing this in an ongoing way where we're less reliant on things like reminders. So just I'm jumping ahead here. Like, it can take a while to go from the beginner to the intermediate phase. So I just want to say that take your time, like, be patient with yourself, and just gradually, all we're doing is gradually inviting deeper and deeper advancements into our bodily awareness. Just gradually, slowly but gently. Now, in the intermediate phase, this is a really excellent space where we're more aware of our body. So at this point, we can start to do more meaningful shadow work and these sorts of things, because we're somatic shadow work, because we're aware of bodily sensations and essentially, therefore, the underlying conditioning running our nervous system. We can do it in the beginner phase as well, but it's probably not going to be as effective because we're more attuned to the subtlety of sensations in our body at this point, which is giving us access to the things that where we can start to reverse the conditioning. Now, this phase, actually, you'd think you might start feeling more ease in the intermediate phase. You think you might be like, okay, now I'm more embodied. Things are going to feel a lot better. I'm reversing the conditioning. But what can actually happen is somewhat of the reverse. For me, man, I remember as I was doing this mindfulness work, becoming more aware of bodily sensations, it was probably the most challenging period of my life, hands down. I remember I would get up and I was working my first job as a cardiac technician out of university. And I would be going into the workplace. And because my sensitivity was opening up more through doing deep meditation and mindfulness work, when I would walk into the workplace, man, I would get so triggered because there was so much unconsciousness that I was previously completely disconnected from that I was now fully aware of. So it would look like walking into the workplace and then being around certain people that would trigger me. And then I was in the body feeling these sensations, and they were so intense and so uncomfortable that there was a reason why I was avoiding them in those earlier phases, like I mentioned, when I was in school, being like the popular kid. All those coping strategies that I'd built my identity upon were slowly breaking down. And what was revealing itself was these primordial, avoidant, scared, fearful sensations, right? And this was after meditation work. So it's almost like I was becoming more aware of what was painful in my system, which had the almost like reverse Uno effect of what I was hoping it would do. I became more aware of the pain. So you might notice, and you might be asking yourself questions in this phase like, what am I doing wrong? Why isn't the meditation technique and approach and embodiment approach actually helping you? Why isn't it not working? Like, there's so much here. why can I be with some sensations and not with others? And why do I go completely unconscious in some situations, but I'm able to be with sensation in others as well? So the practice here essentially looks like beginning to expand upon that process of becoming aware of sensations in your hands and your feet, the sun on your skin, washing the dishes, expanding upon that and dialing into the subtleties more and more, and feeling more of your body in trickier and trickier circumstances. So we're bridging that gap even more of where we're mindful of sensations in the day, that we're actually looking for that almost continuous contact. We might still use reminders here if we need to. And we're bringing that embodiment into more difficult situations, like social situations, where we're noticing like our palms, the feeling of our palms, while simultaneously talking with people. A little subtle tip here is we can have about like 50% of our attention in our palms and then like 50% noticing the other person with our seeing faculty. And we're really paying attention in this phase, and really beyond this phase, really as much as we can. We can even do this in the beginner, but more pronounced in the intermediate phase, is we're noticing like, when do I bottom out from sensations? When do I get to a point, and for me, this happened often in like social situations, where is it where I get to a threshold where I then disembody myself? So I'm talking with someone, and then I'm aware of bodily sensations in my body. But then I notice they do a certain thing where they might look at me with a look of contempt, or they might like get a little bit angry at me or something like that. And then I lose that bodily contact and I go up into my head and I go into a coping strategy, an habitual way of acting, something like this. It's like, okay, can we catch that? And then just be gentle with ourselves, be like, oh, okay, look, wow, look at that. Wasn't that interesting? And just bringing it back into that sensation in the body of what was that? So we might need to reflect upon what we noticed happen there. And it can be helpful to do something like journaling at the end of the day as a practice to notice like, oh wow, when my wife got really mad at me there, I just completely lost contact with my bodily sensation. Can I bring that situation up in my mind and just gently replay it, noticing the subtle images, and then going into that sensation and just feeling what was that? Almost like we're studying a movie character and just feeling those sensations full on, playing them out, just with a sense of like curiosity and compassion and watching them play out. So then again, we're building our embodiment skill. We're bridging the gaps even more. And in these fringe situations where we would usually get triggered and go into a coping strategy, we're coming into full-on contact with those sensations now. And therefore making the unconscious more conscious. And we're also really developing our faculty of equanimity here. Where previously we would go into a coping strategy, or previously we would beat ourselves up with a certain sensation or pattern of behavior. We're now coming into deep and rich contact with that sensation, with a sense of non-resistance and a sense of loving acceptance, allowing it to be what it is. And again, like I mentioned, at this point we can do really effective shadow work. Like I do somatic shadow work with people. Usually around in this phase, it becomes really much more effective. But even for people in the beginner stage, or especially in the advanced stage, shadow work can be really effective there because we're in contact with the programming. So then we need to make it even more conscious and unravel it in a way that we can then go back out into daily life and reverse Uno and come into much more authenticity, centeredness, and nervous system regulation, where all the magic happens. Okay, so now let's talk about the advanced phase. So the advanced phase is really where we have continued to build upon our embodiment practice, where we're noticing more and more that we have continuous mindfulness throughout the day. So that gap is bridged so that we're almost in contact, if not we are in contact, with some degree of our attention being in bodily sensation all of the time. Now, we've also integrated at this point a lot of the fringe circumstances that we would otherwise bottom out and run away or go into distractions and these sorts of things to not feel our uncomfortable sensations. We've become a lot more aware of these things. And we're also just, we're fully in contact, and we can even be in uncomfortable situations that would otherwise really trigger us. You know, things like social anxiety, things like when people get angry at us, things like when we get angry at them. We're really in contact with these really primordial, squirmy, emotional sensations that we would have otherwise disconnected ourselves with identities and coping strategies. But, you know, at this stage as well, we also have the humility to know that conditioning runs really deep. And I just want to encourage you that I remember, for example, David Schwartz, the founder of the technique Internal Family Systems, which is essentially a inner parts somatic shadow work therapy model. He said in an interview that, you know, I'm still doing this work 25 years into developing this practice. Some of the most renowned people that I really look up to, people from the group Inside Circle, for example, who have been doing this work and training people and really embody what it means to be at a deep end of this work, they're still doing the work. You know, the work goes on, but at this point there's a humility. Yes, there's ongoing contact with bodily sensations and a very deep embodiment. But yes, there's also a continuous degree of mastery where we're getting to that BMX point where, but really there's no point that we're reaching. We're just continuing to become ever more aware of all of the coping strategies and ways that we're not acting out of our deepest core, our deepest authentic core, our deepest, most loving core, and how we're projecting our trauma and our karma and all of our stuff onto other people. So there's really no end to this. And yet, if there were a question that we're asking in this phase of advancement is, how and where am I not showing up in the most loving, benevolent way possible? What's preventing me from loving this person when my body's rejecting and casting a projection onto them and saying that there's something wrong with them? What is that sensation in my body? Oh, wow. Can I feel that? Wow, I noticed that in this space, I feel really frozen. There's a frozen energy when this person did that. Okay, can I be with that with a soft, gentle equanimity, which at this advanced stage becomes more and more second nature? And can I just be curious about that and not project onto them? Or you know what, even if we do project, obviously the more advanced we get with this, the less that we do this, but if we do project onto that person, how quick are we to then catch, slow down, bring that situation up, and feel the sensations fully and directly, breathe into them, soften the body, and be like, okay, well, what was that? And then take with humility, even though if maybe we've been meditating for like 10, 20 years, right? But to still have that humility to be like, holy shit, this is some core stuff. Like, I really felt like I was in the right in that situation with my partner. I really felt like it was the most real thing in the whole world, that she is definitely wrong. Not speaking from experience here at all. I am. She's definitely wrong. Okay, let me feel that. Whoa, yeah. Wow, that's actually my shit. God damn it, right? This ever deepening awareness of our bodily sensations, right? So that's where we're going with this work, from beginner to advanced. So just to recap, and then we're going to get into some really key, important areas where we can deepen in this into daily life. So it's going to, I think you'll really get a lot of benefit from this, what we'll go into. But to recap, the beginner stage, we're just becoming aware more and more. We're reconnecting the mind-body split that has happened through subconscious conditioning and karma that we've experienced through our life. Noticing sensations in our hands, in our feet, in the subtle things that we do, like noticing our hand on the water in the shower, opening the fridge door, everything and anything that we can do to remember, and using reminders to get to that place frequently throughout the day. So those small little windows gradually become bigger to where we meet the intermediate stage, where we're becoming more and more aware with less dependence on reminders to come into contact with bodily sensation. And we might even notice that, like, oh my God, there's something wrong with me. Like, there's so much conditioning that I was unconscious to in this phase. And we're becoming aware of even subtler sensations in the body, where we're noticing like tensions in our face and engaging with people, more and more degrees of realization of what our body's doing at subtler levels. And then in the advanced stage, we're essentially more or less in constant contact with bodily sensation, where almost all the time we have some anchor, even if it's a small little anchor of attention in the body, in everything that we do. And that continues to deepen and continues to get much richer and more subtler and subtler levels, where we might be noticing things that we were completely unconscious to 2-3 years ago, where we're then integrating that and allowing ourselves to feel it in an ongoing way, with a sense of ever loving and deepening equanimity and compassion and willingness, which, again, I'll remind you, is setting the stage for true transformation of the heart, true transformation of reversal of all of these unconscious coping strategies and all the ways that we've been unskillful towards ourselves and others. Man, like a really good teacher of mine says, that I'm totally on board with, it's the lovers that will change the world. So true. The people who come into contact with these unpleasant sensations, all of these coping strategies, like this is where the source code is stored that leads to all of the horrendous acts in the world of harm. Hurt people hurt people. The way we reverse it is to go into the body and look in the most squirmy, uncomfortable sensations and sit there with a certain zeal and openness to see what we need to see, to liberate the deepest love in this world and for ourselves. Okay, so let's get into the more nuanced and practical applications of this into daily life, to really dial this in so you can take something away with you, that even if you're a beginner, even if you're advanced, this stuff will be useful for you. So the first thing that I've got here, I've got a couple notes, is to lean just beyond your edge as much as you can and be gentle and celebrate the wins with yourself. So what I mean by this is, right, because we're coming into contact with these really primordially unpleasant or perhaps unconscious sensations, there's a reason that they've been unconscious, right? And if we're interested in nervous system regulation to live our best life, essentially, right? Because the nervous system, once that's regulated, so much more opens up in our life, because we're not in a state of flight, fight, or freeze, trying to keep the world at a distance. We're becoming more of a participant when we're more regulated. And then that opens the doorway for everything, basically. But when we're becoming conscious of these things, we might notice that we want to be somewhere, maybe in a job or maybe in a relationship, where we want to make something happen. And we know that's where our intuition's leading us. So then we say, okay, let's just use a classic example of approaching a woman or approaching a man to ask him out on a date, right? So where previously we might have had something we can all relate to, that can, depending on our upbringing, that can be quite terrifying, right? Because we face real rejection Where previously we might have gone into a coping strategy and we might have said something like, oh, you know what, like, I'm not gonna approach her, like, I'm too spiritual for that. Or like, I bet she doesn't even meditate. Something like that. I don't know, insert your coping strategy. We notice like, okay, we feel that. And then our body basically says to us, nah, dude, you're bullshitting yourself. And we're like, okay, God, I'm bullshitting myself. That's actually just a coping strategy, like a very spiritual sounding coping strategy. God, okay, let me feel what's underneath that. Oh, yep, there's fear. And I feel like if I step into this fear, I'm gonna melt into a puddle. Okay, right, so this is leaning on your edge. So, okay, I feel that, I'm just gonna soften into that. Can I take one step toward that girl or that guy? 2 steps, 3 steps. Can I then even let go of there being a huge narrative and just align to my core and just lean into what it is that I want without any heavy expectation on how it's going to go, and just feel that sensation, be in a state of malleability and letting go, and just walk up and do it. Hey, I think you're kind of cute. Want to go on a date with me? Maybe don't do that. Your pickup game's probably better than mine. But, right, we're feeling the fear. We're feeling the fear. And there's a really beautiful story I want to tell you. Again, this comes from Joseph Goldstein. Remember Joseph, he told this and it moved me so much, but essentially he was on a retreat. Joseph was on a meditation retreat, and he had to deliver a song to a Zen master, a certain mantra, right? And I'm paraphrasing, I might actually be getting the story wrong, it might not be completely accurate. But right, he was so nervous, like so horribly nervous, having to sit in front of the Zen master, present to him and sing a song. And person after person would be going into the room, doing their thing, and he's outside walking around, like fiddling his fingers, doing all this, getting really nervous. And then it's finally his turn. And Joseph, he walks in, sits down, there's like this towering Zen master looking down on him with a stern sort of like warrior look to him. And Joseph starts doing his mantra. But the Zen master, he can tell that he's like, Joseph, you're compensating. Again, stop, again. And Joseph, so he's like, oh, okay. Then he sings it again, and he still has a coping strategy. He's still overcompensating. And the Zen master says, Joseph, no. Again. And then at some point, that armor drops off him. Man, it makes me feel like emotional. That armor drops off him, and he just softens into how he's feeling, and he starts whimpering out a mantra, like really vulnerable, right? And then the Zen master, right, this really stern look to him, looks at him with like a compassionate, soft gaze and says, very good. Right? When we let down those coping strategies, we feel what's real and we just express from our authentic emotion body. People fucking love that. And it's going to be scary sometimes, but it's true, it's real. And we're training ourselves to actually love where we're at as well. And also building our strength and our confidence to move in the direction of where we want to go. Another thing, so another category I want to talk about is social, relational stuff when it comes to embodiment, because this is where a lot of our conditioning forms, and not a lot of people talk about it. And being someone who's personally been through a lot of social anxiety, right? Really getting like underneath that, where like people pleasing and overcompensation, these sorts of things have really softened away significantly. I mean, I still experience things, but because that karma is very deep, but so much of it's been dropping away that it's night and day. If I compare myself like I did to the start of this video where I brought that up, how I was in like high school and stuff, it's just like, wow, what a difference. first thing is, what do we do when we feel like frozen energies, right? So there can be a thing that happened with me personally where I would be feeling this embodiment deepening, but sometimes there would be really uncomfortable sensations, like really numb, tight sensations in my body. And I would have this program that would come online of, well, what if they see this? What if they see that I'm uncomfortable, right? I want to educate you something. This is something I learned from Thomas Hubel, that, you know what, it's actually okay to freeze when we're talking with people. What we're dealing with here is energy that has been passed down to us and is totally impersonal. It's totally innocent. So when we feel these frozen energies, which we'll start to notice more and more as we do this embodiment work, they'll feel like very dense, numb balls of tightness. We might feel it in our face. I know some people I work with have like a lot of tension in their face or maybe in their neck. For me, it's usually in the gut or the heart or something. So initially we can be really avoidant of that coming up. But if we put our attention into it and just say, oh, okay, frozen energy is here. And we just breathe into that. We don't try to change it. We don't try to use a coping strategy to get away from it. And we just feel it. And we open up to it. And that act in and of itself, when we can engage with frozen, numb energy, is very, very powerful. Because even in that process, in the process of attuning to another person, we are allowing that to be in the field. And we're not overcompensating and trying to make it something other than what it is. So again, we're coming back to authenticity more and more. So I just want to invite you that when you feel those frozen energies, it's totally okay, and it's actually doing the relational field a service by unraveling that frozen energy for yourself and everyone else that you're coming in contact with. When you open yourself to that energy and being, respectful, sometimes if we're really frozen, we need to get away and resource ourselves, and that's actually okay. But sometimes we can actually be with that for a little bit to help integrate that in ourselves and in the relational field. Another really important tip here in the social dynamic that is not really talked about as much is, can we be okay with silence? Now, and this is an ever deepening skill, and it truly, for me, I sometimes still feel like I need to fill the silence. But more and more as this deepens, there's a sense of being okay with being in that uncomfortableness and really just running a quick little filter each time you're about to say something, like, is this necessary? Is this coming from my authentic core? And is this really needed in this situation? Do I need to, can I just be silent? Can I just only say what's necessary? Because often we'll notice that when we're in a social encounter talking with somebody, we might notice that there's these uncomfortable, squirmy sensations. And they can be really uncomfortable. The social matrix, the buy-in to need to fit into social standards can be incredibly strong. Never underestimate the forces of delusion. No matter how awake you are, no matter how much spiritual practice you've done, these things can be really powerful. So just noticing, can I be with that sensation of discomfort? And can I just align to my relaxed inner core? Maybe even asking a question like, who am I? And relaxing into presence. Only saying what's necessary. Only saying what's true. And letting it come from your body. Letting it be congruent and attuned to your bodily sensations when it comes out through that deepening of embodiment that you're undertaking in. And another thing I want to add here in the socially anxious domain, but really for anyone, right? So if we struggle with things like rumination, they're like, oh man, why did I say that to that person? I'm such an idiot. Or what were they thinking of me? What were they thinking of me in that situation? A really powerful thing that we can do is when we notice that by attuning to our bodily sensation is, maybe we couldn't be with that in the moment, but maybe after the fact, what we can do is we can bring that situation up, really make those mental images alive in our experience, and play that situation out, noticing the fine details and just watching what happens in our body. It's good to do this immediately after the situation if you couldn't be with it in the situation in the moment. But just noticing that subtle playing out of what were the sensations that got too intense where I then became disembodied, went into a coping strategy, or did something to distance myself from that sensation. And then just feel it with like a relaxed gaze of attention, feeling it fully and wholeheartedly, breathing into it, and just letting it have a voice. Maybe from this place you could do shadow work, the sort of thing that I help people with. But just very basic, asking it, what are you trying to do? And listen to it. Really just make that unconscious conscious and build out your emotional capacity by being with that sensation. So if you've made it this far in the video, I just want to congratulate you. You're doing really well. I'm going to get into something really juicy, especially for non-dual seekers as well. I would appreciate if you like the video, and if you're finding it valuable, share it with your friends as well. It does a tremendous service to me to help my channel get out there and help people who really need this sort of understanding and work. So thank you. Thank you for helping me in that regard. The next thing I want to talk about is like really intense and bewildering sensations. So I want to talk about things like non-dual doubts, or victimhood mentalities, or helplessness as well. These sorts of energies. And for example, I want to give you an example of one of the things that I personally struggled with for quite a while. It can still come up, but there's such a healthier relationship with it now, is morning anxiety. So this is something that I struggled with. I remember years ago, even when I was meditating for hours at a time, I would sometimes wake up in the morning and feel so utterly overwhelmed with really ugly, squirmy, anxious, intense sensations. It even got to a point where sometimes I had suicidal ideation. That's how uncomfortable it was in the morning. I just don't want to get out of bed. With those sensations, those are the sorts of extreme sensations I'm talking about. What do we do with those things? Or what do we do with that intense helplessness? Or what do we do with those doubts that just feel like, man, I'm not going to wake up in this lifetime. I've tried everything. I just can't get it right. Or, just utter helplessness of, it's never going to get better. These sorts of things, right? And really what this takes is just more of a deepening in the embodiment spectrum, where we can and do have the capacity to truly feel these most uncomfortable sensations. What this takes to get to this point is we really can actually accept these sensations as part of our sensation matrix, but it just takes a willingness and an ever-present deepening to be curious, just a willingness basically, to be utterly curious about our deepest and most compelling conditioning. And what that takes is really just a slowing down, a real slowing down, a real deep willingness to feel, and to forego the tendency to go into thoughts, to get away from the sensation. So what's often followed by these intense sensations, things like helplessness, for example, is a whole worldview behind that I'm a victim to this. And I don't say that in a harsh way. These are just archetypal energies that live in the human nervous system. Really intense energies, right? And they can feel so utterly overwhelming, but then we feel them and we can be with them a little bit. But then in the background, we're coloring this whole experience with a view of victimhood potentially of I'm never going to get out of this. Why me? What's wrong with me? I'm so broken, right? But what we can do is we can pull out even more. So we're feeling like, say, helplessness or a non-dual doubt. Oh, I'm not going to wake up in this lifetime. Why can I not de-identify from thoughts? I'm such a bad meditator. And we pull out and we're like, oh, wow, okay, I can see that. And then we pull out even further and we can be like, oh, wow. Man, there's this sensation of like defeat, of like, and it feels so real. Oh, wow, it feels so fucking real. Man, can I feel that? No, I can't feel that. I'm too bad of a meditator. Oh, wow, can I see that? Oh, wow, look at that. I can be aware of that too. And we notice that sensation and we soften into that. And it's almost like we're pulling back more and more. Like it can sometimes feel like we're feeling 30 centimeters outwardly behind our back, casting out the net even further to being with the most unpleasant, otherwise unbearable sensations, and catching any thought or coping strategy that keeps us safe and keeps us in familiarity. Because if we actually look at these sensations of like victimhood, maybe that's actually serving a function. But it can look like this sometimes, where it's so unclear to us, like it's right here beside our eyes, that when we just cast out that net a little bit further, it's like we just pull it into view and then we're like, oh wow, victimhood. Okay, let me pull that. Wow, look at that. I can actually be aware of even victimhood. And what's that doing for me? Oh, it keeps me safe. It keeps me small so that I don't look big and bright and step into my power so that I can stay safe. Right? Just pulling out that net even more with anything in experience. And then what we do is we build more confidence in that process, so that now for me, even if there is intense sensations, which happen less intensely for me in the morning, but sometimes with like morning anxiety, it's like, man, I can be with this. No problem. No problem at all. I know this will go away. I know I have really powerful nervous system regulation approaches to soften this. But I can see how previously that would have absolutely decimated me and it would have kept me in a cycle of rumination. So as you progress from beginner to intermediate to advanced, in that ever deepening advancement into BMX ride, like riding on a bike, right? That nervous system capacity will keep building out more and more to capture these more subtle energetic things that can be actually felt in the body itself. So I want to invite you and challenge you on that. What are you persistently and consistently coming back to as a coping strategy for your most profoundly reactive behaviors? Become aware of that and see where that takes you to become aware of things like that. And this feeds really nicely into the next point I have, which is to slow down. Slow down. When you're out in daily life, there will be things that are so triggering to you that the tendency of the mind will be so inclined toward the previous way of being that if we don't slow down, we'll miss it. We'll feel that thing and then we'll jump into the coping strategy. But if we feel that thing, we're like, slow down. Let me feel that. Okay, I can be with that for a bit. I can be with it. I can be with it. Wow, I can actually be with this. I can really slow down here. That's key. Because again, if we go into the situation, we're not sort of slowing down, we're not having that gentle intention to be with bodily sensations, we'll miss it. We'll go into reactivity. And we'll play that pattern out and continue to play that pattern out. Which is okay. If we then miss it, we might then have a meta judgment on top of that of, oh man, I'm so disembodied. Why am I like this? It's like, okay, let me notice that. Let me not beat myself up there. Let me pull myself, catch myself. Oh, I'm beating myself up. What does that feel like in the body? Okay. Then we might dial it back and then bring up that situation again that initially triggered us off in the first place. Really taking a glass half full approach every time that we catch ourselves in a state of reactivity or going into a coping strategy. But the key thing, just slow down. Last thing I have here for you in this list before we get into the guided meditation and then the advanced tip that'll really help dial this in for you in a profound way is, man, I want to assure you that you really do have what it takes to feel these things and to reverse them. You really do have it in your capacity to do that. I don't know if anyone's ever told you that. And it's a tough path, and you're not going to get validation for it. There'll be dark moments. There are dark moments when you feel sensations that just feel like the end of the world. You might even have sensations of utter helplessness, of suicidality. You have the capacity to feel them. You truly do. And you have the power, no matter what you've been through, to reverse this conditioning. No matter what you've been through. Let's get into the guided embodiment meditation now to help you let this in at a deeper level. I encourage you to forego distractions if you're driving in the car, listening to this like a podcast, to really slow down now and give your attention to this process. Maybe pull over your car if you need to, but really give it a go. And we'll get into the advanced tip after this to dial this in the advanced spectrum. So take a moment to settle into your chair. Wherever you are, just settling in. Just noticing any thoughts arising in the cognitive space. And just noticing the weight of your body on the chair. Just sinking into that sensation. Feeling your feet on the ground. Just coming as you are. Whenever you engage in a process of embodiment, of checking the body, just bringing an attitude of, this is what's happening. This is what's here right now, and that's okay. It might feel so numb, might feel so tense in your body. You might even be having a thought right now of, I don't know how to be in the body. Just notice that you're having that thought and see if you can track that confusion of I don't know how to be in the body, or I don't know how to relax, to the body itself. And if there's another doubt, I don't know how to do that, Where do you feel that doubt? Settling in even deeper, I'll notice to see if there's any tension in the face. Is there any tightness on your forehead? Any tightness in your cheeks? Any tightness in the back of your neck or your jaw? Just allowing it to be what it is and softening your gaze around that sensation, giving it more space, just with that intention of this can be here. And sweeping down through the body, through the shoulders, through the arms, forearms, fingertips. You might even notice that with this noticing, the body starts to relax even more. Little kinks in the body soften. Parts of your body just drop in and let go a little bit more. And we can just draw attention to the midline of the heart, down through to the belly button or solar plexus. Down into the gut and the thighs, feeling your weight even more deeply onto the chair. And into your knees, calves and feet. Now you might just notice, what is it that's aware of these bodily sensations? Who or what is aware of bodily sensation here? Just letting your attention soften into that space. If there's a doubt in the body, I don't know what that is, what's he referring to? Just allow yourself to feel that sensation. And then ask, what's aware of that doubt? Sensation of falling backwards onto the bed after a long day at work, or falling off the back of a scuba boat as if you were scuba diving and just sinking backwards lifelessly into the ocean. With your attention in that space, gently and slowly, just like a baby crawling towards sensation while still feeling connected to that sinking spaciousness. Allow your attention to crawl ever so gently toward the entire sensational field in your body. So that it's as if half of your attention is in that spaciousness of what's aware of the sensation, sinking backwardly, and half of your attention is within the bodily sensation itself. Just breathing. Just allowing your attention to move wherever it wants to go in the body. And attention seems to have a very healing effect where it naturally wants to go to where we don't want to go. Maybe a tension in the gut, tightness in the face. And just with a gentle smile on our hearts toward that sensation, we allow it to do whatever it wants to do. You can use a phrase like love or thank you or yes, you can be here to whatever sensation we're noticing from that spaciousness. Even if there's doubt, just smiling at the doubt. Thank you, doubt. And with our attention anchored in that spaciousness, we might come to bodily sensations. What else am I avoiding here? What else is starving for my attention? Bringing our attention to the subtle body. Can you feel the bones in your thighs? Can you feel the vague, ever so slight sensation in your gut of tension? Can you allow yourself to sink into the even subtler layers of bodily sensation? Or even if there's frustration and doubt or confusion, like how could I possibly feel my bones in my body? Or how could I possibly feel that subtle body that Sam's talking about? Just feeling that sensation. Connecting to that spaciousness simultaneously. Saying thank you. This is the embodiment space. And I encourage you to take this sort of practice with you beyond this meditation, beyond this video, and remember as much as you can to come back to this space in every facet of life. Okay, great job. If you're just coming out of that meditation, we'll shift to the advanced tip now. Now, in that guided meditation, I pointed out that we can be in a state of recognition of our true nature. The thing or the space, it's not really a thing, is it? That's aware of sensations themselves. And that spaciousness gets deeper and deeper the more that we attune to it, the more that we build a relationship with it. And the capacity to be with that spaciousness is a direct correlation with how much we can handle with our nervous system capacity. So I would encourage the non-dual seekers out there that the more that you can attune to that spaciousness of your true nature, or anyone who's interested in this path, the more that you can do that, the more that you'll be able to handle in the body. And eventually we'll come to a point where that spaciousness and sensations are not two separate things. They're converged into one, where you'll simultaneously be able to feel the spaciousness of your true nature and also feel sensation at the same time, accommodating deeper and deeper layers. So this is something more on the advanced spectrum. I hope you found this video helpful. This is a lot of what I know. I'm sure there were some other things and subtle pointers. So if you need more help with this work, you can work with me. Top link in the description. You can also join my mailing list for when I announce a new program I'm going to be releasing, specifically for non-dual seekers, for regulating their nervous systems in daily life, and bringing these sorts of things in a really deep way into daily life, and doing the shadow work to liberate our deepest and most unconscious patterns, and also working from the ground up to regulate our nervous systems. That's going to be the program that I'll be launching soon, to work with a small group of people who are really serious and earnest about this sort of stuff. So you can join the mailing list there. I'll have a link in the description as well. And if you want more on this sort of stuff, I'll link a video that I think is relevant that you can watch here, which will be the next step for you to deepen in this journey, which you can watch now. And please share and like this video. A lot of work went into this, so if you can like and share it with people who you think will benefit from it, that'll help me out tremendously. But otherwise, much love to you, and all the best. Good luck in your embodiment journey.